I would now like to introduce and invite Jennifer White, Sherry Visser to speak about the program, as well as welcome Amy and Kevin, who are current students, and they're going to speak about their experiences.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Child and Youth Care Program Spring Open House at Niagara College. We're really happy to be here today, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate our students coming as well. So that's really great. Can't wait to hear from them. Before we get into the program details, I'd like to introduce ourselves a little bit quickly and hear from our current students that are here today. So here we are at one of our retreats. First is Jessica Morris, is our coordinator / professor, myself, and then Sherry Visser Fleming, who is your placement officer. I'll just comment quickly before we get to the students about a little bit about our background. So one unique thing about our program is all three of us are former child and youth care practitioners. So it really brings that vast experience and knowledge behind us. So Jess has some residential background working with kids, some foster care. I come from an education background as a youth counselor and child and youth worker in classrooms. And Sherry also has some education background working as a CYC and in justice especially. So very disciplines for sure. Thanks. So our 3-year child and youth care students, our 3rd year, which are term 5, and I'll get into the whole program of instruction where it isn't actually over 3 years anymore, but I'll talk about that when we get to that slide. So we have some predetermined questions for our students that I will pose to them just to make it go smoothly. Amy, we'll start with you if that's okay.
Sure.
So the first question is, why did you choose Niagara College?
I chose Niagara College because I live in the area. I know of its reputation and it's very community based. I've compared it to other programs and colleges, and to me, it was just the best fit for me. Yeah.
Thank you. What do you love about being a Niagara College student?
Again, it's just the community. It's very interactive. The faculty, staff are very, very friendly, interactive. And what else have I? I have a little notepad here. The NSAC services, they provide help if you need it. And yeah, I've also had the opportunity to work on campus, which was awesome because having a part-time job off campus and juggling schoolwork was a little tricky with me. So having that job on campus allowed me, it was understood when exams came, I needed that time. And it was all in one spot, right? So, yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Amy. How do you feel supported by Niagara College faculty, staff, and services?
Again, it's with the community-based programs, that whole community is very engaging. We do have an awesome health and wellness program as well. If you need additional help or counseling, they're there for you. I thought that was very handy, having sort of a healthcare provider on site if you needed it. And yeah, everyone's just very friendly. Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. How did you find the transition to online learning and experiential learning opportunities?
So I have had experience of taking online courses prior to this transition with COVID. I didn't find too much of an issue with it. I know any of the secondary school students that may be on here transitioning. MS Teams is awesome to collaborate on group projects. Zoom as well. It's just the document sharing is more seamless through MS Teams. But yeah, just learn your apps if you need them, and you'll be fine.
Thanks, Amy. What would you like to share with our potential students that encompasses your placement experiences so far?
I've loved all of my placements. My first placement was with the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara at 3 different locations, and each location had its own unique programming. And then I was also with Pathstone, the day treatment at DSBN setting, which was interesting during COVID time. In September, they had an issue at the school that the day treatment was located. And so you had to adapt and just to continue delivering service to the students. And then my third placement, which will start in May, I'm looking forward to. It's going to be a huge learning curve, is with the Native Women's Incorporated here in located in Fort Erie, but they're across the Niagara region.
That's awesome. Good for you. Thank you so much for that, Amy. I really appreciate that. Great responses. Kevin, you're up.
Oh,
First
sweet.
question.
All right.
Why did you choose Niagara College?
I think Amy really summed up a lot of really great points, but I try to hit on a few other things, like program length is like a huge thing for me because it was a compressed program, and having a 2-year advanced diploma rather than a 3-year, you can just get into the workforce faster, and it's a lot easier for you to transition. I know that it sucks that you may not have summers and things like that, but you get through the program so quickly and you're ready to work and you're ready to go for it. And definitely proximity. I mean, I'm from the area around here, and Niagara College, based on all the other programs that I was comparing it to, it just seemed like the right fit for me. And that's something that I really wanted to take into consideration.
Great, thank you. What do you love about being a Niagara College student?
Okay, so I think the best part is the staff really includes the students in the learning process, and seeing it's like the program, after you're finished the program, the teachers, the professors that you're actually learning from are going to be your peers in the field after you're finished. So it's almost as though these people really want to help you succeed because they know that you want to help child and youth in that care region, right? And everyone respects everybody. I've had very, very great opportunities speaking to everyone. And one of my favorite things about the program is you see such a change in the ages, from a difference between a 17, 18-year-old kid who's just coming out of high school into this program and somebody like myself. I'm going to be 30 this year, and it's just a totally different learning experience, right? So there's no ageism. Everybody treats everybody with very, very high respect, and they just want to prepare people for the workforce and getting prepared for this, right? It's amazing.
Thanks, Kevin. How do you feel supported by Niagara College faculty, staff, and services?
Well, the mental health portion that Amy was talking about is amazing at Niagara College. I mean, Niagara College is very, very respected with its health programs already there. So, I mean, when you have that as a resource, you might as well take advantage of it. And I definitely understood that whenever I had questions or there's any sort of thing that I needed to have answered, the teachers are there for you, and the professors will take their time out of their day, and they're prompt with their responses, and they're very succinct with what they're trying to say.
Thanks, Kevin. How did you find the transition to online learning and experiential learning opportunities?
Unlike Amy, I hadn't had experience online learning before, but in my opinion, it's been very seamless from the student's perspective. I can see that the professors could have quite a bit of difficulties, but they're very, very good taking their time out of the day to make sure that everybody's taken care of. And if there is a hard time where an assignment has to be handed in and a link is broken, there's always time where you can figure out to actually help the process a little bit better, then you can correct it. It's a lot easier. So when the professor is able to reach out to you quickly, I think that that's one of the best things to have.
Thanks. What would you like to share with our potential students that encompasses your placement experiences so far?
As Amy, I didn't have the DSBN route, but my second placement was through Pathstone Mental Health, and that was in Welland. It was amazing. And my first placement was with John Howard Society, and that was out of St. Catharines, and it was out of Fort Erie. So it was 2 different locations. One was a youth wellness drop-in hub, which was amazing. You got to see a bunch of people that are just kids that sometimes they don't necessarily need mental health. They're just looking for other kids to be with and to talk to. And this is a great setting for them. And it was great for me to see in that perspective, because I wouldn't only think that there would be vulnerable youth that we would be working with, but there are other kids that they have these issues where making friends is difficult and maybe they act out because of that. And this is just a reason. It's just a way that we can have all these kids come together and just help everybody in the community. Like Amy said, it's a very communal like experience at Niagara College, especially with the placements.
Thanks very much, Kevin. You both answered so beautifully. I so appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Of course, these are two of our star students, as you can very much already gather that, I'm sure. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. So why do you want to be a child and youth care practitioner? Self-reflection is a key component in our desire to learn about ourselves and the children and youth we work with in the CYC field. It takes a special kind of person to be a child and youth care practitioner. We work with children and youth as whole persons in order to promote their social competence and healthy development by participating in and using their day-to-day environments and life experiences, and through the development of therapeutic relationships. The most important element is the relationship with the child or youth. We focus on that throughout the entire program and all of our courses and placement. I'm sure these guys can attest to that. So again, it's a very versatile profession. There's a variety of disciplines to choose from. We're more and more expanding as a field every year. So the opportunities are pretty much endless. These are just a few examples. The justice field, which of course Sherry comes from, education is more me, residential, community outreach, and mental health. And please ask specifics during the Q&A regarding any of these fields. These are some of our placement community partners that we utilize. As Kevin mentioned, John Howard Society is in there in the middle. The RAF, Sherry places a lot of students there in various aspects. We've got some new partners like Atwell that's out of region, which has been nice. So we have a sort of a nice scope of places that's not just centered around Welland. So lots of examples there. And just here's a little video just to talk about what a school-based child and youth care practitioner's life is like. This is filmed at the Halifax Center for Education. It's just 5 minutes, so might give you a little bit of a better perspective.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Communication. Right behind.
So our child and youth care practitioners, or CYCPs as we're calling them, they are basically a resource available to students in our schools that have needs regarding their social learning, emotional learning. It could be behavioral challenges, coping strategies, and things like that.
You must have an ACE.
I do have an ACE, except it's still not very helpful.
My name's Travis Sampson, and I'm the child and youth care practitioner for the Citadel family. It's one of the new positions created.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Addition to 5.
1, 2, 3. Every time, man.
Youth care workers are sort of trained in the importance of relationships and how to form really strong working relationships with kids, and then understanding that a lot of kids that are struggling because they don't feel supported or they don't feel connected to somebody, and that sometimes that connection can be enough to get them on the path to success.
The specialty of our child and youth care practitioners is absolutely, without a doubt, being able to make relationships and create lasting impressions with children and with youth. So that's anybody from primary all the way through to grade 12.
You're forming a positive relationship with a child, building trust so that they can operate in the school setting a little better, but then you can also take that relationship, and when maybe you have to address a concern, they know you're, the guy who played Crazy Eights with them and has fun with them, and it's coming from you from a place of caring, not just, an adult waving the finger at them. So that's why I think the relationship is important.
Support can look different depending on the student's needs, and what's been asked of them. For example, we have some CYCPs that do individual work with students by encouraging them to learn skills through competitive or cooperative play. And we have others that are running small groups during lunch hours to help kids be able to come in and connect.
You don't necessarily have to be shoulder to shoulder, but what you do have to do is have these touching, right?
All of our CYCPs come to us with a background in child and youth studies, but they come from a variety of places in their personal careers that have afforded HRCE the great good fortune of having people that have skills anywhere from running restorative circles for students. So when there are interpersonal conflicts between peers, we have others that have worked in detention centers for youth. So those folks are able to work through with some real crisis intervention skills that they've had and honed for years. Their backgrounds are varied, but they're incredible.
I do some emotional education training, talk about triggers, coping skills, what it feels like before you lose control of your emotions, and then how to respond in a way that's safe and isn't gonna negatively affect them. I do some small group stuff, again, experiential learning. Supporting kids to learn in the way they learn, games, right? That's how kids learn, having fun, engaging in something they enjoy, and then have some lessons built into it around communication, teamwork, cooperation, trust, and then debrief after to kind of pull out what they did. It was fun, but it's not just fun. They learned a little something too. What made that activity easier?
Communication, empathy, and team effort.
Right. What about when you yourself were getting frustrated? Did you find it easier or harder?
Harder.
Right?
So our child and youth care practitioners are full year staff. So they're with us 12 months of the year. They're here over March break. They're here during Christmas to cover sort of the time when students' lives continue and classes are concluded. In the summer of 2019, we'll be running transitional camps for students. So that's going to be camps aimed at students who are transitioning from elementary to junior high school or from junior high to high school and are experiencing a bit of anxiety, or maybe they're students who have showcased behavioral issues or relational issues in their current school year that maybe could use a little bit of support and like a little taste of what school could be like next year. So that they can be better prepared. And we're hoping that with them being better prepared, we can also encourage staff to be prepared for those learners who might have some challenges or differences, and be able to just support them holistically when they arrive.
I just love the direct work, and I like seeing a light go on, and then moving forward they sort of figure out what they need to figure out to experience success. Good work. And you're out. Off the class.
So hopefully that brings a little bit of context to what child and youth care practitioners do, and sort of the day-to-day routines that they do, especially from the education side. So why choose the Niagara College CYC program? The new program of instruction, as I mentioned earlier, we were a 3-year program with summers off, July and August off, and we've condensed that, as Kevin said, to a 24-month program. So it's still a 6-term advanced diploma. The terms haven't changed, but now it goes from September start and it ends in August. So grad would be in October for these guys. Next is our small class sizes, relationships with CYC staff. We know all of our students. I know all my students by name. There's no number here. We're not a larger sort of, school, post-secondary school. The first year retreat is something that we really like. It's in first term, and it's really about team building and getting to know each other, building relationships, which in the end helps so much throughout the time that you're here. The high percentage of graduates securing employment after graduation. We have so many. It's been so great to have our students come back once they're out in the field and now they're grads, to speak to our current students. So that's been really awesome. Articulation agreements. So if you're looking at getting a bachelor's degree in CYC, for example, there are options to go to Ryerson University or maybe Griffiths University in Australia, or a bachelor's degree in health and community services at the University of Victoria, for example. Also, there's hands-on experiential learning, as we're all talking about. Many of our classes are very much experiential applied learning. electronic evaluation and hourly tracking system for placement. So Sherry can certainly talk about that during the Q&A. We've got a great system set up for placements now. Giving back to the community. So through coursework and placement, there's some great courses that we have that are really giving back to the community as well as placement. So field placement opportunities for paid experience. This is rare. And Sherry can speak more to this too during the Q&A, but our placement in general, I think either Kevin or Amy said it's scaffolded. So there's 3 placements totaling 800 hours. And so the first one is really community-based, after school programs, that kind of thing. The next one is more education-based. And then the third one is just a little bit more elevated to whatever you want to kind of streamline yourself into, what kind of employment you would like. And Sherry does a really great job of trying to connect those places. But it is a little bit more elevated. It's more hours as well. So anyway, we can talk more about that in Q&A if you have questions. And then finally, supporting children, youth, and families. That's what we want to do here as CYCPs. Teamwork makes the dream work. These are pictures of our retreat at one time and some applied learning within the classrooms. Exciting opportunities at Niagara College is one thing is our co-curricular record. It's used to enhance your resume and career academic portfolios. You can use the CCR to showcase your co-curricular involvement to future employers, graduate schools, and for grants and bursaries. So the link will be posted for you, I think, in the chat. Correct, Kendra? Thank you. Next is our Be World Ready program, which is amazing. Currently, all international travel is suspended, but the college is dedicated to maintaining our strong global partners. So we're able to continue to offer international learning experiences for students when travel reopens. The Child and Youth Care program has been an instrumental part of one of the trips to Amsterdam. We really were instrumental in designing some of the places that people visited. So anyway, we hope to be part of that again someday. Here's some of Niagara College's innovation and trailblazing items. So some things that have been initiated. We have through Niagara College's Canadian Food and Wine Institute. So there was artisan distilling, brewmaster and brewery operations management, commercial cannabis production, and commercial beekeeping, to name a few. So some really interesting programs that you won't find at other colleges. And if you're in CYC, you can still go and visit some of these places on the other campus. And then some other featured services here at Niagara College. So some of our restaurants and schools of teaching, restaurant, of course. And then our last slide. So to close our presentation, here's a quote by Fred Rogers. We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes. And I think that just goes without saying that we are frontline workers as child and youth care practitioners. And so although we may not see all the outcomes of the work we do immediately, it's a really rewarding field to be in, and we all really love it. So that's really all I want to say about that.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm gonna stop share this particular screen and go back to some of the placements that we have. I wonder if Sherry, you might be able to share some of your experience, what it's like placing students, things that they get out of it. I'm showing you right there, and I will share my screen again.
I'm sorry, Kendra, so you said just like me to talk a little bit about the placement experience?
Yeah, so what's the average kind of trajectory for students? When do they start looking at placements? How do they apply to get placements? What's their relationship with you when it comes to placement positioning?
Right, so that is my full-time role with the Child and Youth Care program. So I'm working on it daily. So the way that things work is you don't do your placement in the first term, but it comes up very quickly in the second term. So we start planning and completing requirements in the fall term when you first start in the program, so that you can be prepared to go out in January of the following year. So if you start this fall in 2021, your first placement will be January 2022. And it goes by very quickly. So we start working on getting things like criminal record checks completed. And we also have health clearances that need to be completed through the college. So I work with you side by side, trying to help you work through that process in that first term. And also our professors are amazing. They know the process as well. Because we're a small program with 2 full-time professors and then myself, we're very interconnected in what we do with our roles, and we're all very privy to what's happening in each course and in placement as well. So then after that first placement, which is, like Jen said, scaffolded, it's a smaller placement where it's after school programs. You only need to complete 150 hours in that first placement. So it's just to kind of dip your toes in the pond of getting used to working with kids and getting to know kids and getting to know some of our community organizations and community partners. And then the second placement that students do, it's every second term. So then that would be in the 4th term. This coming fall, we have another cohort of students going out into placements, as Jen mentioned, into the school-based kind of program. So when you look at some of our partners on the screen, there's Niagara Catholic District School Board. We have the District School Board of Niagara and Pastoral Mental Health. And Pastoral Mental Health has day treatment options in their Merrittville location, which is in Welland. And they also have classrooms in various high schools throughout the region. And so, so we place students in those locations. With the Niagara Catholic District School Board, students are placed often with the old term for child and youth care practitioners was child and youth workers. So they're referred to as child and youth workers, but there still are students that are graduating and fulfilling those roles in Niagara Catholic. So students can end up being in a variety of elementary or secondary schools and Niagara Catholic District School Board for their fall placement, and as well as the DSBN. So with the DSBN, not only do we pair them with the youth counselors, that is what CYCs are called at the DSBN level. They also are in the alternative education classrooms, and in particular in the Pathways program, that's with DSBN. So ALTED is where a lot of our children and youth end up when they struggle in school with behavioral challenges and things like that. So they're oftentimes the kids who get labeled as, acting out, bad behaviors, and so suspended, expelled, things like that. So we have different programs that our students are being trained in, supporting those kids so that they can be successful and hopefully reintegrate back into their regular schools once they learn some skills. And that's what the CYCs do in those classrooms. So it's a really fulfilling, robust opportunities for the fall placement. And then, as Jen mentioned, final placement. So where Kevin and Amy are looking at is this spring, summer, going May through August, is a whole variety. So we're looking at places like Atwell, at Niagara Chapter Native Women, at Youth Resources Niagara, Women's Place. So you'll find youth workers in many different places, in particular even places like women's shelters and children's shelters and even men's shelters. So we have a whole bunch of placement students going out to the YWCA, working frontline in the shelters experiences as well. Boys and girls clubs, all sorts of things like that. And even partners with things you might not consider, like Niagara Peninsula Conservation. So students will be going and helping create programming for spring and summer camps, and then also facilitating those camps. So taking on a bigger role in terms of basically being like full-time staff, because it's a 400-hour placement, it's 25 hours a week. It really is almost like a full-time job. So, so we work really hard to kind of give every student a very well-rounded experience in placement. So I know Kevin and Amy have heard me talk a lot about, making sure that not only is it scaffolded, but that when you leave our program, you don't have just one experience that's similar 3 times over. You have 3 very different experiences. Yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's probably more to it, but I am looking, if there's anybody who has any questions around the specific agencies, I'd be happy to speak to that or any parts of the process.
Perfect. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So we're going to move into the Q&A section. So if you would like to ask any specific questions, we are obviously a small group. You can also use the chat if you're more comfortable. Again, those are located at the bottom of your screen. If you move your mouse down, it should appear. It'll be the two kind of text bubbles that say Q&A or the one text bubble that says chat. I know one question that I get when speaking to students about this program often is, what soft skills should a student already kind of have, or what's like soft skills could they try and work on now with their high school volunteering in order to help prep them for a program like this?
Just by saying, so really it's about working with integrity and you know, working as a professional. So professionalism is pretty key. So just being able to navigate communications, written, oral, you know, having that ability to build a relationship and have the teamwork. So that those are some of the skills. I'm sure I'm missing some. Sherry can help me.
Well, I do. I love that you said professionalism, because I think that's number one. And we don't always know what professionalism looks like depending on where you are at in your stage of coming into our program. So we work really hard to help support you in the soft skill area of, I mean, building relationships is all about soft skills. So building rapport with others, being confident in yourself, knowing how to present yourself to others. A big piece of what we do is group facilitation and individual facilitation when we go out to placement. So academically, there's a lot of focus on that while you're in the program, so that you are feeling prepared when you go out into the community to have those practical experiences. So yeah, I would say that a whole lot of it is just like interpersonal skills, a lot of relationship building, a lot of communication skills. And we focus a lot on conflict resolution, because when you're working with challenging behaviors, that's a huge piece of the puzzle, to not only, as we saw in the video, the CYCP was talking a lot about how he's teaching emotional regulation. And emotional regulation is huge. Kids, oftentimes little ones, when you see a temper tantrum, that's a classic, you know, lack of emotional regulation. We're teaching not only students to support other, like children and youth in those goal areas, but we practice what we preach. We have to learn how to use those skills ourselves as well. So we create a lot of situations in classrooms as well as in placement, so that students learn to start stretching those conflict resolution skills. And that's why we do a lot of group work. So I think the group work piece is huge. I would say that almost every course that you're taking through the program, or many of them anyways, you'll be doing a lot of group work focused work, so that we learn how to work within the team setting. And then I take it and say it's very, very important to learn to work in a team, because once you're out there in the community working, practicing as a CYCP, you always work in the team settings at that point in time. So those skills are incredibly important for success.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The first question coming in is, if they have volunteered or worked in one of the placement areas you just spoke about, can they still do a placement there, or would you recommend going somewhere else?
I love that question. And that's such a meaningful question for me. I think a lot of our students we've come across that have had similar situations where they would like to be where they've been before because it's comfortable. I also, though, and I kind of challenge that you're here for new experiences. So usually I encourage something different, right? So I know Kevin can attest to this. Even when he left one of his placements, they wanted him to go back to the placement again for his next placement. And I'm not always the most popular person at the agency level, because when they fall in love with our students, they want to keep our students, which means you're doing a good job when that happens. But then my argument would be, nope, you've already had that experience. Let's move on and give you another, right? And so I would say probably the same about if you have your own experience out in the field. One thing I can promise you is this job is a job that I know quite well, because I've worked in the community. So I've worked at many of these locations that I'm talking about, the John Howard Society. I've worked at the DSBN. I've worked in alternative education. I've worked in youth custody facilities. I've worked in residential care group homes. I've worked with Children's Aid and Child Welfare across Canada, and Calgary and Thunder Bay and here. And my feeling is the more vast experience that you can get in all of our different sectors, the better. And what happens is when you come into our field, you might have experience with one area. So oftentimes we have students that say, I had a phenomenal child and youth care practitioner help me when I was struggling in high school or elementary. And that's one of the reasons that I come into this program. I love that. That's such a wonderful story. but it doesn't always mean that that's where you're going to be placed necessarily in that specific experience, but that is what your vision and your perspective is. So we're here to show you all these other beautiful areas that you can work in the field that you aren't aware of. So, so awesome question. There's no, like, I'll never say an absolute no on anything. It's all about talking about it, finding out the why, and really kind of reasoning through whether or not it makes sense. If on the flip side, a person had a placement, you know, at the same location that they'd volunteered before, but it was a very different role, then I might look at that. So we're all about the relationship and we're all about communication. So I'm always open to talking to people about those experiences. And I've been spending many, many hours over the last few weeks as we're placing students for the next spring summer cohort, talking about what the individual need is and what students are wanting to get out of it. And then my own weigh in on where I think that it could also, they could fit in other places. And I think both Amy and Kevin could attest to knowing maybe they weren't familiar with all of these agencies before they were in the program. They're learning as they go. So sometimes we give a gentle nudge to try some different things.
I was actually going to speak on those soft skills that you're talking about earlier. I think self-reflection is one of the biggest ones for this child and youth care program, is to be able to understand where you've gone wrong or what you can do better in the future. I think the best thing is definitely don't get down on yourself, because this is definitely a learning experience. You're in school for a reason, and these placements, they're there to help you. They're there to help you succeed. So I think self-reflection would be a great soft skill to brush up on before coming into the program.
And just be ready for anything. Adaptability. So you might have things set out, especially in placement for a group of kids, and it never goes as planned. So just be prepared to go with it, change it up, and you'll get through it.
I would also add that I'm a grad of this program, so I was one of the in the first couple of years of the development of the CYC program back in the late 90s. I took the 3-year program and right away was employed. Even before graduation happened, I had opportunities to work at both local school boards here, and you know, that is exactly the avenue that I wanted. So it was a great connection for me. I was working before grad, and that was my life for 14 years. And I advanced throughout the school board as a child and youth care practitioner / counselor. So a really great experience for me. So I do have that background to kind of talk about, refer to, and actually that's where I met Sherry in one of her education stints as a youth counselor in alternate education. So it's funny how, you know, child and youth care is such a small world. We all do interact with each other, even across province and country. You'll be surprised. So that, you know, soft skills and that professional piece is about networking and understanding that you could run into anybody from your class or within your placements or for anywhere, conferences or workshops, you could run into them anywhere, because we're all very connected. So we always have to remind our students of that as well.
No problem. Isabel would like to know a little bit more about the Australia degree opportunity.
Oh, sure. So we actually did have a student go in the recent, I think 2 years ago he went. So it's a bachelor's degree. I believe you receive, I'd have to look into it, which I can find out for you. It's either 1.5 years or 2 years towards your bachelor's degree. So you're only there for, I think it's 1.5 years to complete your CYC degree. Does that help you at all?
I will post the pathway.
Thank you. Yes, because I'm uncertain. I don't have the details written down. So I know it's 1.5 years or 2 years. They're all typically like that when we have an articulation agreement made. Some universities you can still, you know, attend and work on some sort of degree, and you just have to work on what credits you're going to be given. So it's more of an individual, it's on an individual basis rather than an articulated agreement with a college. So that happened to me. I ended up going to Brock for a degree in psychology after my CYC diploma while I was working full time, and then did a master's in education after that. But I had to fight for any credit that I got, and I didn't get very much back in those days. They are giving you more now if you want to kind of streamline into a different one. Sherry's gotten into social work. She's doing a social work degree. So for her, it was a little different too. So it depends on what you want to get into.
I did post the link into the chat for you as well. I just have it up on a second screen, so I can just let you know there's 2 opportunities at Griffith. There's a Bachelor of Child and Family Studies and a Bachelor of Human Services. Both will give you 2 years credit, and it'll take 2 semesters to complete the degree. So you're going to be there for about a year.
That's even better than I thought, Kendra. Wow. Maybe I'll go there next. I always wanted to get to Australia. I did want to add too, even though we don't have an articulation agreement with Niagara College or the college that I went to, Confederation College in Thunder Bay, where I got my child and youth care practitioner diploma way back when. The college or the university that I'm at, Laurentian, is still accepted a whole bunch of transfer credits into the social work program. So when you're interested in looking at your second, if you want to continue on with school, because it's not enough to just do our program and you want to keep going, which tends to happen with many of us, you can look at a whole bunch of different universities, and transfer credits are different for every university moving forward. But beyond the articulation agreements, we also have those opportunities like Jen said. So I'm an Indigenous social work at Laurentian and probably had a year plus worth of transfer credits towards my degree.
A lot of opportunity. And that's always, I know this is semi unrelated program specifically, but a lot of people, it's more cost effective to do a pathway if your ultimate goal is to have a bachelor's in a various field. Oftentimes you get, like I said, the 2 years of credit. So then you're actually able to save, essentially, because tuition and bachelor's degrees tend to be a lot higher. You're actually able to save those 2 years of extra money. And on average, it saves you anywhere between $4,000 and $6,000, depending on where you inevitably do your bachelor's. But yeah, really good cost savings as well. So if there's any parents listening, cost savings.
Thank you for posting that, Kendra. I know I only named a few when I went through the presentation, but invariably there's always a question about Griffith. Who wouldn't want to go to Australia to get a degree, really?
This is the end of our time together, unfortunately. Feel free to meet on Zoom with I unfortunately have to move on to the next portion of my day. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for taking the time to do sessions like this. I know we had a couple of attendees, but these recordings are going to live on much longer and are a great resource as we continue to recruit students kind of into this term, next term after that. They're always wonderful to have.
For sure.
Thank you, Kendra, very much for all your support and help for us in our dry run last week. That was great to connect with you. And
yes, and I will send you those NC backgrounds so that you soon will be covered in blue as well. Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your Saturday and weekend.
Thanks, Kevin, for coming out.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Kevin and Amy.
You're welcome. See you.
Bye.